Supervisor Miller, are you on the phone someplace?
Yes, I am on the phone.
There you are. Okay, thank you. First order of business is executive session. Make it a motion, please, to recess the special session and convene the executive sessions.
So moved. Second. So
I have a
moved.
motion. Now you can say that. There we go. I got a motion and a second. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're in executive session. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Aye. Aye.
Please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Yeah, thank you so much. I was just going to say, is Miller on the phone?
Miller is on the phone.
Do you agree or disagree with the motion to do what I asked for? We want to adjourn the executive session or reconvene?
I do.
There we go. Okay,
Agree.
that makes 5 yeses. Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. We are back in session. That brings us to item number 5, which is a work session, a presentation, a discussion on the Arizona Association of Counties report by Jennifer Marson. Where are you? Oh, you don't look like her at all. Ms. Lewis.
Chairman McClure, members of the board, Dana Lewis, Pinal County Recorder. The Arizona Association of Counties is the only state organization that represents all of the county officials and the governments they serve in the state of Arizona. ACO advances issues with the state and federal government, improves the public understanding of county government, assists counties in finding and sharing innovative solutions through education and research, and provides value-added services to save counties and taxpayers money. Through concise, focused, yet engaging communications, ACO is the county's official voice at the state legislature. It is my privilege to introduce Jennifer Marson, Executive Director of the Arizona Association of Counties.
Hello, Mr. Chair and members.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to come and join you for a couple minutes today. As Dana said, my name is Jen Marson. I'm the Executive Director of ACO, which is like the sister organization to CSA. We're right next door to each other, and I'm very proud to say we have a great working relationship with CSA. So basically, I like to come to all the counties every fall and do what we call county visits, just an opportunity to sort of give an annual report in person instead of providing you with a document that no one would read. So I come and do it in person, but it's mostly an opportunity to maybe share something about ACO that maybe you didn't know, but also I'm here if there's something that you need from us. This is a great time to tell me, or to at least have the light bulb go off in your head, and you can send me an email later. So it's just making myself and my staff available to you all if there's anything that ACO can do for Pinal County moving forward. In terms of, do I have is it here? There we go. So Dana sort of covered all the information on this slide. I will let you know that you have 3 votes on our board at this time because Jill is your Pinal County representative. We have a representative from every county for geographic representation. We also have 1 representative from each of the elected offices. So Michael McCord, your treasurer, represents the treasurers. He's the treasurer's voice on the board. And then Dana Lewis, of course, is one of our officers, joining these other fine people. And so in December, Dana will actually become our president, and she'll be the president from December to December. So 2027 is Dana's year. We're very excited about that. That's right. This is the staff. We have a very small staff. I think out of these folks, I've been there the longest. I actually started as the legislative intern in 2002. So I've been doing this work for quite some time, and I really enjoy all of the issues that counties are involved in. If I'm ever sick of property taxes, I can go work on elections for a while, and if that burns me out, then I can go work on criminal justice. So counties are a great place to interact with. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I know you've got a packed agenda. Predominantly what we are known for is our advocacy work, what happens at the legislature. But this is just some of the other things. So we took 144 active positions last year. We tracked almost 800 bills. That's pretty typical. It's usually a little bit higher on the tracking number, but here's where we are. Cost-saving programs, we have a variety of those available not only for counties to participate in, but for any resident in a county to participate in. Pinal's been a great partner with those programs. We're very excited about all of that. And I'm mostly excited about our new social media outreach. We have long posted what I would call facts, right? Here's the number of bills that we have. Here's the committees that we were in this week, which is all great information, but we really want to attract those viewers to our page and to our message, so we've gotten into the short video space. If you have not seen the video we did with Dana about how she is not Dana Lewis, the basketball player, but she's Dana Lewis, the recorder from Pinal County, her office did a really good job of partnering with us to help make that video, so check out ACO's Facebook and you can find that. But getting into that short video space on TikTok, on social media in general, we've really stepped up that game in the last, I would say, 9 months or so I'm really happy with that. All right, here's some legislative stuff. I'm not going to go through everything. I am going to say 2 key things. The one that's highlighted, that's the most bills that have ever been introduced in a legislative session in Arizona. So much so, if you're familiar with the process, you know that House bills start with a 2, 2001, et cetera, et cetera. We actually had to go to a 4 because they used up all of the numbers in the 2000 series, and they're an even numbered chamber, so we actually had bills in the 4000 series. That's the first time that's ever happened. And then the general effective date is September the 12th. So that's coming up next month. So any bill that does not have an emergency clause, does not have a delayed effective date, the new effective date for all of the other bills that were signed by the governor is September 12th. That's when your offices need to be ready to implement those bills. Just a quick snapshot, we were successful with 5 bills of our platform, and we were unfortunately unsuccessful with 8. Some of those are multiple, we've tried them for many years and they just haven't taken yet. I don't know if they will be submitted to us again this year or not. We're sort of waiting to weed through all of those and see how our board decides those. It's very important to point out, especially in a public meeting like this, it is not the staff of the Association of Counties that decides what our legislative platform is. It is our board. So every one of our elected members can submit proposals to us through their affiliate group, but our board of directors, who is made up entirely of elected officials, just like CSA is, they decide what items make it into the county government platform. Most of our work, though, is on the defensive side, and I say this every year and somebody laughs, so hopefully somebody will laugh this year. Most of our work is because somebody at the legislature has decided that they have a really good idea about what counties should do or what counties should pay for, and we have to go down and explain that is a really dumb idea. Right? And so most of our work is on the defensive side. So I took a quick snapshot of 5 things that we were successful, and some of these were group efforts with other organizations, and some of them were just us. So there was a grazing valuation that they wanted to apply to non-grazing properties. We actually got that vetoed. There was a bill that specified what jails had to do with people when they were in jail over the weekend. We got the bad language taken out. There was a new process for quitclaim deeds. We convinced the sponsor to drop that. This is the 3rd year for this number 4 bill, allowing your jury summons requirement to be fulfilled by being a poll worker. That is just a weird confluence of things that doesn't really match up because it just takes people away from being jurors, which we also need. So we killed that in the House committee, but this last one is very interesting. There was a bill that said if a law enforcement officer or first responder is arrested and convicted of certain crimes, the judge can automatically give them leniency based on the type of job that they had. And our sheriffs came down, full-throated opposition to that, and said, no, we will hold ourselves to a higher standard. We will not be given leniency or discretion just because of the fact that we're in law enforcement. And so we were able to convince the sponsor to drop that issue. So I was very proud of our sheriffs for doing that. Other things that we do, event planning, association management. If any of your offices need help with anything, we're happy to do that. If you need a customizable legislative tracking list, we're happy to put that together for you. We work with a variety of different programs. I pulled 2 of them out, I think, to highlight here, the Public Surplus Program and the Cash Vesh Partnership. While these are agreements that would bring non-dues revenue to the association, it is not my job to push them hard on counties. They're out there. If you'd like to use them, that's great. But I need you all to decide, of course, what's best for your county, and you don't need a hard sell from me on anything. But if you want more information, I'm happy to provide it. This is the other one that has to do with student loan forgiveness. It's a relatively new partnership, so we're working with them because almost everybody that has gone to college, unfortunately, has student loan debt. And so we're looking for ways to sort of ease that and make whatever paycheck money they're having come in last longer in their household and do more for them. And then on the horizon, just a couple things I want to point out. At that December conference, that's when Dana's going to take over as president, so we're very much looking forward to that. Unfortunately, we can't have officers from the same county, so nobody in Pinal could opt for that third vice president role to be in that progressive leadership chain. But after Dana rotates out, if there's anyone in Pinal who's interested, we would love to hear that in future years. And then I sort of already talked about leaning into the video space and social media, so I won't be repetitive there. That is my contact information. That's my personal cell. I have it with me all the time. One of the key things that I'm very interested in, because I went from being a bartender to being a lobbyist overnight, that was my career track.
Same job.
A lot of it the same things, that's exactly right. Customer service is a big deal for me. So if ACO is not being responsive to something that you feel like you need, or you feel like ACO needs to do, that's what I, as the executive director, would like to know. I like our response time to be quick. If you ask me a question, I'm going to respond to that question as fast as humanly possible. If that means a little bit of research, I'll give you, hey, can I get back to you in a couple days, right? But it tries to be that day. If we're not meeting that expectation, that's the kind of thing that I would like to know. So please feel free to reach out. Please follow us on our social media. I'm looking forward to working with Dana as our president. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Marston. Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. That brings us up to item number 6, presentation and discussion to provide education and understanding of data centers.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just do an intro for staging?
It says that's what you're doing, so yeah, please do.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, as a part of our continuing education series on learning about data centers themselves, the industry that they function in, as well as the supporting infrastructure, utilities, et cetera, we have two very distinguished special guests with us. We have Dr. Ebert, who is Dr. David Ebert, who is the Chief AI and Data Science Officer at the University of Arizona. And I think his time will be a very conversational question and answer a type of dialogue with, I believe we have either 3 or 4 planning and zoning commissioners in the audience too. That, Chairman, is up to you to how you would want to facilitate conversation and include them. But one of our first kind of more, I guess I would call it an industry experience, knowledgeable person for those questions that we haven't had that type of person here yet in the board meeting. And then we also are fortunate enough too to have Scott, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, so I won't try, but from SRP, who is the Director of Strategic Energy Management. And I think this is going to give us a better understanding of how when utility providers are and companies are talking about, you know, these data centers aren't increasing everybody else's utility bills, which is a major concern of our communities. How is that happening? How is that calculated? And how are they ensuring that that's a true statement? So that's our goal there. But first, Dr. Ebert will be first, and then Scott can come up when Dr. Ebert's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Dr. Ebert, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, members of the board. I consider myself to be here as a technical resource for you and to give you an idea of what's going on in the current state of technology for data centers and their use, a little bit of their history, and what are the trends moving forward. So I thought I would just start out by mentioning that everyone uses data centers in anything you do with your phone, or probably 95% of things you do with your phone or a computer or online. Everything is running through a data center. Data centers aren't a new topic. They really originated with the first computer systems in the 1940s and the machine rooms for those that then became data storage. And that was sort of the industry standard for computing until the PC came along and businesses started using that. But as cloud services started being proposed in the late 1990s and 80s, when people were aggregating these together to make the buildings more efficient, people provided them as a service. And then in the early 2000s, actually in 2006, Google opened its first hyperscaler data center. So those have been around for 20 years, and over those past 20 years, the efficiency of data centers in terms of the utilities used per power use efficiency, et cetera, decreased by almost 100%. And so the industry did a lot in terms of going to more efficient designs while increasing the amount of computation done by 6 times for the same amount of utility use. So these technologies have improved, but over the past 3 years, we've had the demand for AI-enabled technology driving the boom in data centers. And there's a big difference with the use of computers for AI in that the systems that are being deployed have very dense circuits, require a lot of computation, and that generates a lot of heat and a lot of electrical use. So each individual rack in a server takes a lot more power, and that's why you're seeing this big change go. So that's what we're seeing today that's driving this, and the fact that we need more and more computer capability, because when you do a Google search today, by default, even though you don't turn on AI mode, it's using machine learning and AI algorithms in the background. So it's using some of that technology, and it takes more resources to give you the same response. And so these are the things that have been driving what's going on, and the fact that this technology has just become pervasive. And in my view, the reason the services such as Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT and Claude and all of those have taken off so quickly is because they're taking things that could be done over the 3 or 4 years beforehand that took technical experts to do and turned it so you can just type something in English and get it to do all of this for you. So it made it accessible to so many people, and that led the huge demand and growth of this. And so a lot of things that people have been focusing on in terms of measuring it, I think, my view from attending international conferences on resilient data centers and sustainability is there is a growing consensus that right now people are picking metrics to measure what a given data center is going to be, either in power use efficiency or water use efficiency, or a heat measure or a carbon measure. And that's very important, but you really need an aggregate of how all of those go together to say how sustainable or resilient of a design is something. And we need to get away from just thinking of consumption to what are they doing. A lot of data centers can use exactly the same amount of heat and cooling, whether there is no computation going on or whether they're doing productive computation that goes into applications. So really the metric that is starting to be changed that people should be thinking about is how efficiently are you generating computation from everything that's going in. And that's a really good way to think about it, because the University of Arizona many years ago, for instance, decided to use a commercial partner for doing most of its computing instead of having it on campus. This means that those resources in those cloud servers can be used over the summer when students are around for other companies, and we're not paying for the power and cooling of a data center on campus that's sitting there not being used. So it is an efficient way to do things in the cloud. But I think it's really important for us to think about computation per kilowatt hour, computation per water use, and these are the things where it means. And so we've seen this massive increase in a change of the hardware technology just over the past 5 years in terms of things that draw much more power, generate much more heat, but instead of this happening over a gradual period where the designs and data center architecture kept up with it, we're now playing catch up in that area. And so you're seeing, so right now we have this issue where that has sort of gotten out of hand, but people are coming up with much more efficient ways to make data centers more efficient. There's a lot of work being done, and this is something that is key that people know, and hopefully you do know, that if you talk about direct chip or water-cooled systems, they aren't using a lot of water. It's recycled liquid or recycled water that's running around, so it's zero net liquid or water that's being used in them. That's much more efficient than things that use evaporative cooling or traditional things that are water-driven. So that's one of the big things that is coming forward. There's single-phase and there's dual-phase ways of doing that, and two-phase systems that are making it much more efficient. There's also systems that are being done that are using using air temperature cooling for this. And the consensus and Intel has shown, Intel was able to demonstrate a high-density facility that the machine rooms ran at 95 degrees Fahrenheit instead of 65 to 68 degrees. And that difference meant that they only used 29 hours of cooling in a given year to power that data center. So that's a change that is relatively new and just a few people are experimenting with, but it's something to think about when you hear proposals and you're thinking of conditions, because most chips will work over 100 degrees and the whole system keeping it about 100 degrees works fine without affecting the computers. But the traditional way things were done in old systems, having that window of that air conditioning buffer so the machine room wouldn't overheat led to the standard that we're still dealing with today. So these are ways that we're seeing new technologies and new management structures come on board. The other thing that is happening, which is where my expertise comes in as a software person, is really the fact that the software to run these systems hasn't changed. We're using computer systems that the design of the chips, the fundamental design was developed in 1945. And there you had very little data and it was mainly compute. Now it's massive data driving the compute. And this is something that we're seeing new designs coming along. The machine learning algorithms can be that drive ChatGPT, and all of these can be so much more effective. There's been a huge improvement in increasing the effectiveness of the old models of ChatGPT than when they were first released. And so the industry found that they could get these powerful models out. They didn't have to spend the time on optimization to make them the most efficient computing because computer resources were available and there was demand, so they got them out there. But you will see thousands of time efficiency, really probably more, about 60,000 time efficiency in software over the years, over the next few years of these systems, combined with new architectures coming on board. Hooked together, this will mean the demand that will continue to grow for these systems can be served probably by the data centers that will be built in the next 5 years. The good thing about data centers is the building infrastructure doesn't need to change as the hardware changes and the computer software changes. It gives you the ability to do more in the same footprint. So I think, all of these things show we're at a point, it's not a good place on the curve, but the future looks much better in terms of doing this. So just as you're looking at all of this, it's important to understand these changes. And a big thing that has actually happened over the past 3 years is that there has been the use of analytical algorithms and what people call AI systems to optimize the workload in these data centers to make sure that they are running more. They're running computation distributed across the system. They're not creating machines that get very hot, that drive up the cooling for areas that don't need it. They do dynamic load balancing and as we add more of this efficiency into it, the systems will become more efficient. So, these are the type of technologies you should be aware of. And the other thing that I think is good to point out just for reference is having data centers nearby versus having them in remote areas makes a difference for certain applications, but not for others. If you do a query wanting to know what movies this actor has been in that you're just watching and he looks familiar, it doesn't matter if that takes 2 seconds. However, if you're doing real-time control of traffic signals or you're using computer vision guided robotic surgery, having a delay of 2 or 3 seconds can be catastrophic. And in a lot of real-time control systems, such as tracking objects in space, military, and as I mentioned, traffic and emergency response, you need that critical response. And having all of that being done up in Oregon or overseas will have too much of a delay for it to work. And that's why you're seeing the proliferation of data centers across the US. So they do have a point, they do have a purpose having them local for certain applications that need those. So that gives you some of the background that, I wanted to make sure you're aware of what's going on in the future. And, I'm just here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Supervisor, oh, you got one?
Yeah, you want Steve to go first?
Well, I was going to ask Steve if he was there, but go ahead, Supervisor Vidiello.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you coming out today. Yeah, I actually have a lot, but I just probably just a few I want to narrow down to. With over 1,548 data centers actually running today, Arizona being the 6th largest at 82, and Virginia being at 320 data centers. You're saying the location is very important, but how many is too many? And then when you're building them in areas that are sucking up a lot of water and using a lot of power, and then we're in 100+ degree weather, how sustainable is a data center in those particular areas, and how much water, such as, some of these data centers that are trying to come are 200,000-300,000 square foot, if even bigger, and how do we sustain those data centers long-term without sucking too much power and water usage, obviously being the two? So the constituents in my area ask these questions day in and day out, and I just don't know enough about it, and that's why we asked you to be here today. So
Sure. Given the trend and the growth of data centers, the actual use of and demand is increasing greater than the rate they're being built. So I do not see the current trend over the next 5 years overbuilding data centers that will create empty buildings to be repurposed later. I don't think you'll see the rate of development continue probably beyond 5 years, but I've discussed this with many colleagues in terms of all of the uses of this technology. It's getting into more and more applications, and it's really over the next 3 years, pretty much everything will do something using a version of what's currently called AI. A lot of it used to be called advanced analytics, but it takes this computing. And so I don't think we're going to be overbuilding. I mean, how many is right for Arizona is a question I haven't studied, and is something that I think everyone should ask of why should it be here. In terms of the use of water, there are many designs and technology that's available, so facilities can be virtually water neutral or completely water neutral. And this is something that is clear and has been proven. And in terms of running them in our environment, if you're running a data center at 95 degrees for a large portion of the year in Arizona, given how dry it is, you can actually use air being blown from the outside to pull the heat away from the computer systems, right? Because we have lots of days of the year where the average daytime temperature in mean is not over 95. So you can combine that and think about doing that running at high temperatures. For years they've been putting things up in the north of Sweden for data centers where they can just have, remove boards on a barn, an old agricultural facility, and have direct air cooling because it's always so cool. But we can actually think about doing that here. So there are technologies for that. For power, it is something that people have to consider, and the utilities need to be involved and think about that capability. There are a lot of people using renewables and using on-site behind the grid power for backup and things like this, as well as there's new technology coming available. Current nuclear fission power plants are being licensed to actually power a number of these in New York State and other locations in Pennsylvania. And Our university has been collaborating with the Department of Energy National Labs on helping them achieve their mission of having commercial fusion power available by 2035. And with commercial fusion power, you don't have any radiation issues. You basically have the fact that you're powering things like the stars are powered. And the goal is to be able to, the Department of Energy's goal is to have fusion generators in every location, in every city in the country. So we've got the gap until we get there. And getting from the positive laser fusion that occurred at Lawrence Livermore 3 years ago to sustain 24/7 commercial power is a big engineering challenge, but it is a mission of the Department of Energy and the government. So we are in the situation that there is a lot of demand.
So your comment was that you said, probably within the next 5 years, we'll probably need to back off in general. My question then is, if today we would approve a data center, it takes 3 years probably from today to build. So why would I want to keep adding more and more if in 5 years, one, the technology is going to shrink, and then we're going to need less data centers? So why would I?
I'm saying the rate of change is going to decrease, and a given data center will be able to handle more powerful computers, but the rate of increase of the efficiency of those computers for at least 5 to 10 years will be overdriven by the need of having things. Every application in your phone will be doing more and more things, doing more and more advanced algorithms. If you look at precision agriculture and all the things people are doing to try to save water and get smarter technology and produce efficient crops for food sustainability, it all is driven on, analyzing video, making real-time decisions. That takes huge amounts of compute power. So in the 5 to 10 year range, I would see. So I would believe anything approved today that will be constructed over the next 3 years and even over the next 5 years is going to have demand. But I don't think you'll see the rate of growth of applications. It will slow down quite a bit by that point.
Okay, I'm going to let some of the other guys get some questions in.
If I
Thanks.
could,
Supervisor Goodman.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, I have a series of questions that I would like to know if it'd be reasonable to ask these or maybe even put them in part of an ordinance or something that we might possibly do for data centers. Is it fair to say that they can determine how many gallons of water that they would use annually? And that full, the building construction side and at build out, how much water they'd actually use?
You should be able to get an estimate from them because working with some data center providers over the past 5 years, they have given that up front in their plans.
Okay.
To the boards that they were talking to. And, any infrastructure they were planning to create to supply that through like using recycled gray water and things like that. So
Okay.
putting a requirement in for, my view is even though I'm a computer scientist and understand the need for these, I'm very concerned about the environment and think we need to ask questions.
Okay.
And make sure that the public knows and that you make the right decisions. You have the authority to decide and put regulations on to decide what type of technology and what plans go into your community.
Okay, and I think
it's really important that the people proposing things are transparent and that you're informed and can decide what's right for the community.
okay, and I think you probably
To that point,
answered.
can I just interject there? When we visited that one in Goodyear a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a 400,000 square foot building.
Right.
2 stories, 200 and 200, but they said that they would use 200,000 gallons of water one time.
One time.
And it was a 50-50 mix. Basically, your car radiator, 200,000 gallons of Prestone, 200,000
Right,
gallons
right.
of water. And it sat there till it ran 100,000 miles, so it was like 7 or 8 years till they had to redo, to drain that. Just
And
like,
then they're able to recycle
and
it.
then recycle some of that and then reload. So
That's-
they're not using that much. They are using a lot of water in relative terms. but
Initially.
It's not much water, yeah.
Yeah, and then, with some of the, we've got a lot of real estate that's turning into homes. And so that's going from agriculture to homes, so there's that urban conversion process. But you already answered part of the one question was, where would they get the water from? And you already said it could be the recycled water. They could use the recycled water. Another question that I would assume that it's safe to say that they could determine how many megawatts they're going to need to generate power to keep these facility.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, all the plans I've seen, people have been talking to the utility companies, and they can give what their need will be per year for the next 5 years of the.
Would require some of that. Who pays for another question would be, I think you mentioned earlier that they could participate in creating the energy necessary, the electricity or whatever, and how that looks like, what that looks like. They can be a big part of paying for the infrastructure
Absolutely.
to generate the power to do that, correct?
Right, and some people are putting on-site power plants, other people are using solar power. And, as I mentioned, in Pennsylvania and New York State, they are hooking into idle capacity or restarting nuclear power plants. And are planning the majority of their power coming from that.
Okay, yeah, and I think I was reading an article where the Corporation Commission, Arizona Corporation Commission, is looking at making some of that type of the requirement on these data centers, is where they bring power, so it's not a burden to the
Right.
to those that are already here in existence or the businesses that are already here, but they're bringing the power with them, and so on and so
Right,
forth.
and having that
Okay.
discussion with the power providers to understand their plans and what it will do to rates for consumers is something that, I think is a great idea.
And that's also a recent executive order or mandate that bring your power. You can't put any burden on the.
Correct, and I think that's what the Corporation Commission, I think legislation's even looking at that.
That doesn't increase their cost, except that it may cost more to generate power in the future by those companies just to provide for those homes. But
Yeah.
that's a different whole set.
Yeah, and I think because we've been so inundated with a lot of the, we've got, to Rich's point, we've had a lot of VTLO. We've had a lot of concerned citizens out there. Probably they're generating off of IA or AI. That's initial appearance. That's not what we're here about. On AI that generates some of the concerns that many across the country, people are using the systems, going to the data centers to pull all the information that they need.
Absolutely.
And I, for one, I did the same thing. I went to look at what are some of the concerns, what are some things as a supervisor that I should be looking at, and it's amazing what is available today as far as information for all of us.
And
And the cool part about all of that was that it gave references and allowed me to go to the actual ordinances and things here in our county as to certain things that we've been proposing in ordinances and stuff like that, so that I can back and look at actually, it sends me there. So it allows a lot of computation to be happening so quick and so fast that we're in a world of information right now.
And, the one thing I will say is make sure you actually go to that reference and make
I
sure it's
have.
correct.
Yes.
Because it's only about 80% of the times it points you to a page that you'll find that specific fact. Normally, the conclusion will be right, but what it gave you as a citation of why it recommends something or says this is the case is right now only a little over 80% of the time that it gives you that information. That's improving month by month, and there's an organization that does a check every month and rates all of them, so you can keep track of it. But just don't trust what you get. Just like because you find something on Wikipedia or a web page doesn't mean it's the way the world works.
So
Like Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
I have a
Yes.
great story about Wikipedia. You brought that up. So one of my son's friends was Wikipedia is true. It's true. And my son said, really? That's great. So he typed something in there, like basically his friend was an idiot. He says, go look your name up. And he looks it up and says, hey, so-and-so's an idiot. He's like, hey, how'd you do it? Because it's, you have to be careful of your sources. So just saying. That's interesting.
And we did take that tour, but I also reached out to City of Mesa and talked to the individual that was part of the Google Center there that they've got in City of Mesa. What was interesting was they got approval, They showed X amount of water that they were going to have to use, and it was quite a few acre feet that they were going to have to use. And by time they got it built and everything else, the technology had advanced so far that they used a closed loop, and they only used less than a third of the water that they calculated they were going to need. And that was to fill it, and because it's a closed loop system,
Right.
it's even far less water that they're using.
Yeah.
And that's at one of the Google facility there in Mesa.
Yeah.
So,
It's great that that's occurring, you know.
but to your point,
These-
what you were
right.
saying,
Yeah, these things are now
Technology
getting
is
out
advancing
there
so fast.
commercially. It just isn't, people have proven it can be done. We're seeing it deployed, which is, that time from development to deployment is really short, which is great for
Okay.
saving water and electricity.
I'm done with my stories.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Supervisor Surtee.
So I have a question I've been asking for the last year, and the experts either don't know or else they make something up. For instance, my cell phone, we have cell tower coverage. I'll leave Florence to Florence Junction. I lose coverage because you've got towers that cover. And I ask, why do these data centers have to be here? Why bombard this area? If they all work for us, why do they have to be here? Is there a data center grid where they're all connected? And if they don't have to be right here, why don't we put them in the most godforsaken part of New Mexico? Why do they have to be right here? And if we don't have them right here, are we behind the curve? And so nobody ever answers that, or else, like I said, they make up an answer.
So it depends what you're using it for. I use the example, if you Google something, you don't need a data center next door to answer that and get the answer 10 times as fast, right? It can be running up in Oregon or Washington. I mean, I know that the AWS cloud that the University of Arizona works, the primary computation and storage is occurring in Oregon and Washington. But where it occurs, you can, as a client, you can ask for that and determine it. But they do dynamic load balancing across the country, just as Google does and all the other companies. So they are all connected in a grid. But if you're using, there's advantages economically in terms of the building and potentially any sort of tax revenue. And then there's a high-skilled workforce that's small, that's needed long-term for them, that's in high demand right now, that helps the economy of an area. But when you're using them in terms of deploying systems that are doing now forecasting for weather or real-time flood prediction or doing air traffic control or controlling emergency response systems, that multi-second to 10-second delay to get something computed remotely can mean the difference between life and death. And a lot of new surgical operations where people are doing things using computer vision and using videos and analyzing what's going on with tumors and guiding and doing microsurgery, those systems are using these advanced algorithms. So either you put the compute on site, which doesn't get used 24/7, or you do it in a local data center so you can still get that real time. Now, I was asked this question at the University of Arizona. Does it matter whether or not we have if we run computing right next to campus or far away? And there are certain applications that we cannot have running far away. The things we do where we're tracking space missions and objects flying overhead and other type of real-time operations, the delay to having it go to a cloud service somewhere far away will mean by the time you react, catastrophe could have occurred.
And by delay, you mean what, a second? 2
It
seconds?
could be a second to 10 seconds. I mean, actually, even going from Tucson up here to Phoenix, the fiber optic cable, will probably be less than a second delay with how fast light travels. But with the hops, the way the networks are hooked together and the load on that, it can actually go from under a second to multiple seconds. So these are the things, I had our person who runs our high-performance computing center do some tests, and he knew all of the hops along the way and gave the range, And so it can make a difference. So it's only for certain applications. Right.
Can you,
Yes.
just because we're government, you're not using acronyms, HOPS?
So what I'm saying is, when there are fiber connections, when you go to connect to a cloud service, for you to get to that cloud service, just like with telephone, things go to the local connection, then you know, whoever you pay the service for connects you onto something that directs it to where you're going. And the number of stops and potential rerouting or gates in between there, each of those add a delay. It's like if you think of it in, railroad switching you to different lines. It's the type of thing that all adds mechanical delay.
Okay, so that was HOPS or stops?
I said hops. I
Okay,
mean,
okay,
you
just-
could talk about the gateways that you need to go through would be
Okay.
the technical term.
Just so we're all on the same,
Yes,
sentence
yeah.
here in the paragraph. Got it, okay.
So one more line of questioning regarding, is there a AI grid or a data center grid? Is it possible that a certain manufacturing hub might be built here where this one company has their own data center that no one else can use? It's just for them. They need it. I think we would all be in favor of approving that if they need it. But just making them willy-nilly and, hey, we may need this, we may, that's kind of vague and turns people off. So are there data centers that are only for specific manufacturers?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think of in the computer industry, right? You have ones where AWS does all their computation, Microsoft has their data centers, all of those providers have their own. Meta has theirs here in Arizona for Facebook, et cetera. The same thing with manufacturing companies. They can either choose to have their own data and compute center, or they can choose to use a commercial cloud provider. And it's a trade-off that there's a lot of things to go into of, how much data is going up there, how easy is it to pull off, what are the costs. The good thing about commercial providers, they'll be upgrading it, so you don't have to refresh your machines every 3 to 5 years. But you then have complete control. But that means, are you using that 24/7, right? The reason you can sometimes get a cheaper rate from using one of these cloud provider data centers is because they're combining your workload that you're guaranteed priority access for X hours per day or whatever times, or these machines when you need it. When they're not, they can give them to other people. So those machines become much more efficient, and it cuts down the overhead of running your specific machines. But yes, in the auto industry, a lot of the designs and all of the things from auto manufacturers are only running in their data centers, right? And just like proprietary data, it's the other thing that people work with in terms of do we trust the cloud providers to keep our data private? That's their business and they need to, but is there certain IP or regulations that all of the data needs to stay in a location?
And I think lay people maybe don't understand, myself also, the difference between a server. I mean, at my house, I have a little router, but then this building has a whole room of servers. The bigger the factory, but that's not a data center. That's just.
It is. I mean, it's a compute center.
It is a
No,
data
it's
Data
just-
center, it's
yeah.
just a mini one.
It's just a meaning. And, normally people call a data center something that's a shared resource or gets to a certain scale. But I've had lots of companies show me their data center, right? And I was just at a national lab for a country, and they took me in and they insisted on showing me their data center and compute room. And I'm like, I've been in enough of these. There's flashing lights and a lot of blowing air, right? I'm a computer scientist. I've seen this for 30 years. But they were doing innovative cooling that they wanted to show me off. But yes, people run their own. The University of Arizona does both. We have our on-premise things for real-time systems that we need immediate response. And we have platforms that we allow people, this might be good enough, but when you need even more compute, we try to make it seamless for you to go out to national resources at national lab facilities and NSF centers and to commercial providers, depending on what you need. And so, and really, when you think about it, your phone is easily as powerful as what the first data centers and machine rooms were built for, the IBM 360s. back in the 1960s, right? You've got all that computer power sitting there.
You've seen hidden figures then, huh?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, the server, data center server, used to be server farm, same
Yes.
thing. You walked into a server farm and it was a big warehouse with a bunch of cyclone fences down there, and these people rented a 10 by 20 space with 6 towers in it, and this group rented a smaller space with, 2 towers in it. It's the same thing. The building we were in the other day was a room about this size, had a bunch of rows of servers standing there. Well, didn't have them yet, they wouldn't let us in those rooms, but it's the same thing. They're just a company's renting that space to run their computational.
And that's what a lot of these people who build data centers do.
Right.
They rent out specific areas and then they run it for you. Or you have it where it's dynamic and you can contribute it back.
It's just
But, yeah,
it's a public storage yard for servers is what it is.
And basically calling them data centers, they've really changed primarily to compute centers now.
Yes.
And data combined, as opposed to they were where companies all stored their data. And like Oracle has been a big player since forever because they create the database systems that most of companies use.
Right, I know you guys, go ahead. Supervisor Miller, do you have any questions?
I don't know that I have a lot of questions. I'll weave a question in at some point, but I want to thank for this presentation. It has absolutely secured all the information that I've been studying. Can you hear me?
Yes. We hear you.
So I think the issue that our society has is they don't have any faith in capitalism. Because this is truly exactly what it is. You go and you secure a section of this data center for your company. This is done all over the United States by all types of industries, and then capitalism will determine when there's too many data centers. When I build a data center and I can't sell any space, that will be the end of data centers being built. And I already had predicted over a year ago that companies will put their own data centers in it at some point because it'll be more effective or more cheaper, and they don't have to worry about when they can get their information or how quick they can compute it. We have a data center in the basement of Building A. I mean, if anybody was to ever go over there and look at that, that's what we're doing.
Don't tell them.
I mean, so yeah, I know. Well, newsflash, this is what it is. So I get so frustrated that well, what are we going to do with a building that data centers start going away because businesses start putting them in their self and they don't have to rent the data center space. The guy that owns that building is going to figure out what he's going to do with it. And again, capitalism will take hold, and he will convert it into something else that'll be used. This panic of what are we going to do if this happens or that happens? America's pretty good at solving their problems, and we typically solve it by turning it loose to the free market. And so I want to thank you for the presentation because you've reaffirmed so many of the statements I've made where people think I'm crazy. But anyway, so maybe that makes us both crazy. But anyway, I really do appreciate this presentation, and I'm not afraid of the future of data centers and the use of them. And the technology will absolutely change the market of them in the future, and we will deal with it, and we will survive. And I think it's so interesting that it's being used in such a wide array of industries, and it does make our lives better. It does make our lives safer and just in all aspects of what we assume we take for granted today is because of these types of technology. So I guess I didn't have a question. I just wanted to reaffirm that your presentation was spot on, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
You just wanted to make sure we knew you were there. Thank you.
Supervisor
Goodman.
I think the one comment I'd like to make, and you brought it to the table again, is the tour that we went on. One of my businesses, I didn't have enough money to own a building or anything else of that nature. I went into an executive suite. And that's basically what they've become, office complexes with executive suites that house, instead of people, they're housing computers for information. So that's all they are, executive suites for multiple companies that are renting that space. That's what's going on in Peoria, or Goodyear, I meant.
Goodyear.
I don't know if Peoria, Goodyear.
It's in Arizona.
It's over that way. By Buc-ee's.
Down the street from Buc-ee's, yes. Supervisor Goodell.
So I know these guys love making fun of me, but I'm probably up to 300 videos that I've watched on YouTube about data centers.
And we do like to make fun of
Yes, you
today.
do. But, you know, when I watch them, I'm not hearing any of the positives of what they're really doing, especially like in Virginia. I just went to a NACO conference, and I sat around a table and two commissioners, they call them, we're supervisors, they're commissioners, they talked about the damage it's doing to the local people in the aspect of the low frequency sound. Then the other thing is they're now talking about how, sure, closed loop systems sound great and they're like radiators, and I gotta admit, I was kind of, well, it's true, it's like a radiator, it just keeps going round and around. But then they're talking about when it's dumped. Could you explain a little bit about that? Because when it's dumped, it's toxic. And it has to go through a purifying system that if it's not 100% caught, like in one of the ones in, I believe, Kentucky it was, don't hold me to each state, but they found contamination in the local water. So this is what I'm concerned about, is it being somebody by an aquifer, by an area, especially like here in Arizona, where we're kind of drying up pretty quickly. And then my other question on top of that is the public safety side of it of, God forbid one of these things went on fire. So I know I threw three in there, but.
So, you know, the three specific issues you brought up, I'm not an expert on. And so I suggest you talk to an expert. I can tell you that I have not seen any good studies on low frequency noise. And these are the things that I think in terms of any of those concerns can be put into policies and approval processes for abatement of things, because you can have sound abatement, you can have hours of operation of certain frequencies that people do. For light pollution, people put regulations in for exterior lighting, things like this. In terms of the recycling of the coolant and handling that, I mean, hopefully there are good guidelines and procedures and testing that occurs. You know, the use of liquid cooling in computers was back around in the 1990s. I'm sure it was probably before that, but there were supercomputers that had sort of a waterfall at the front that you could see that it was water cooled, so that when you went into the machine room, it just wasn't blinking lights. But you know, these systems have been around and there's technology, and the technologies are always changing. Some of them do things that aren't even water-based. They're more of a different chemical, just like a refrigerant in, you know, your air conditioning system, and the technology for that constantly changes. But having the right processes and procedures and inspections to make sure that works makes a lot of sense from that. In terms of the fire, you know, I'm old enough to remember that every machine room I went in had a halon fire suppression system, which is now an outlawed chemical. But I'm sure there are alternatives for that now to get this out, because, you know, it's the business owner's imperative to contain that as soon as possible and not have a whole warehouse go up. And so I would see it, the risk, you know, I wouldn't think the risk is different from having a fire from your server room if it's designed well.
Okay, thank you. I did ask the Planning and Zoning Commission to be here, and I believe I have 5 commissioners here, because Ms. Kluker just came in, snuck in the back over there. Do you guys have any questions? Ms. Mooney, please come to the front. Since they're the ones that have to hear this first, I figured it would be great if they could hear all this.
My name's Karen Roney. I'm the Vice Chair of Planning and Zoning. And I have 4 questions, and some of them are comments, and Supervisor VTL will hit on one. But my first is about the water and the discharge. And I'll bring up 2 cases. One I just heard about yesterday, and I did confirm. In Wyoming, there's a $10,000 fine for MEDA because there's a rare soil bacterium that has been put in when they discharge, because even though it was a closed-loop system, it still has to be discharged at some point. Oregon had a $20.5 million settlement over wastewater and nitrate groundwater contamination linked to their data centers. So the water discharge, even though we hear numerous times at Planning and Zoning that it is closed-loop system, it's like a radiator. Your radiator does need to be drained. There are chemicals in it. So it is a big concern. So where will that water be discharged? Require it to be tested prior to going into any type of a public system. Air temperatures. That's something we've heard a lot about concerning solar, but I'm starting to hear it about data centers as well. And something I think that needs to be done is to test the average temperature during each season prior to breaking ground, so for a full year. And then again, after it's up and fully running, to see what the temperatures are and how much it may have raised, depending on the type of system that it is using.
Ridiculous.
Are you talking ambient temperatures in an
Yes.
area?
Yes. Noise. Again, I think you should test the levels prior to breaking ground, so nothing's been done, and then again after it's up and fully running. We humans are sensitive to a lot of different noises, low hums and everything, but the animals, the wildlife, I had horses and dogs growing up. They knew about a thunderstorm long before it ever struck. They were acting strange. So that is just a big concern, and how far out that would go. And last is about the buildings. How quickly will they become obsolete? I can buy a brand new cell phone, and by the time I get in my car, it's already something else has been added, and it's a little outdated. So that is a concern. And like, for instance, there's why so many buildings in one space? Is it really required? Listening to your presentation, while I appreciate all the info, and I just don't understand why so many buildings in one area, especially if companies could start putting them in their own space. So those are my 4 questions, concerns, and I'm not sure how much you'll be able to answer, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for allowing us to be able to ask, since we're the long-winded ones at our meetings.
Yeah, you bet. Dr. Ebert.
So for your first 2 points about the testing and sensing, I completely agree that should be done, and you should have accurate studies and potentially see what limits you want to put on things as you're considering it. In terms of why in one place, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to go in power and backup power that you don't have in normal facilities. I mean, as universities look to upgrade to the next generation of AI computing systems, we're finding, that systems and racks, you're now talking about megawatts of power going in. A lot of data centers that people put up in buildings, you don't have that power running in there. And, the fact that you're creating the infrastructure, doing it to handle 100 megawatts or bigger is something that they can get an economy of scale by having with that. And then you need the infrastructure in terms of the backup generation that could be distributed across all of the different buildings combined, and the connection, the high-speed connections to the internet. So these are things that just give the companies economy of scale.
Any others?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, we have SRP here, that some of those questions power-wise could probably
Yeah,
be
power,
answered.
they can definitely know more than me.
Okay, and we'll come back to those.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you're going to check the temperature of these data centers, you should do the same for every subdivision that's built, because I can guarantee you when you put in 1,500 homes and streets and roads, the temperature will be higher after those homes are built than it will be before, when it was just farmland. I mean, at what point, what kind of regulations are you looking at? That's just a given that there will be a higher temperature just because of the building components that are there. And the studies I've seen, you get 5 feet from these buildings, and the temperature is no different than whatever the forecasters are telling you for the day in that location. That heat thing is a myth in my opinion, and has been proven a number of times. And as far as all of the coolant that's in there, how many radiators in cars are drained every day, and what are those mechanics doing with that fluid? Because that all has antifreeze in it and has all kinds of chemicals in it. It is all regulated very highly, and there would be no reason that a building with a data center would be treated any differently. Those contaminants can come from just about anywhere, and there's tons of regulations that are already in place for the discharge of these types of fluids. And I just want to tell people that we have tons of regulations in place to monitor these types of scenarios, and I don't know that more regulations will help. Thank you.
Well, your comment on heat column is similar to Phoenix, where the rainstorms go around it instead of through it because of the heat column from the pavement and concrete. So that's some of that.
Precisely. Exactly.
So other members of Planning and Zoning, you have a question? Mr. Scott, I see a thought bubble over your head. You want to come up and talk? Come on up.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Tom Scott, and I'm a commissioner, Planning and Zoning. You know, I agree with what Supervisor Miller said about capitalism. It's going to be a demand, and when the demand falls off, then they'll start to go away. I agree with that 100%. My problem is we don't know what we're getting. We know we're getting a data center. We know it has a lot of electric devices inside, but we just don't know how it works. And the presenters that have come before Planning and Zoning so far are not the data center engineers. They're not the site planners and things like that, as we experienced when we went to Goodyear. Everybody was in the room, everybody knew the information, and we were allowed to ask questions, and they had the answers. But the presenters that come to Planning and Zoning, the 3 of them, they don't know. You know, they just know what was on the card. They don't know why it was like that. So I think what the citizens would like to have is transparency and clear, simple answers where your average citizen, like myself, can understand, not the big words and not the, the fancy terms and acronyms and things like that. I mean, that's wonderful if you know what they're talking about, but that just hasn't been the case. You know, I would, they always talk about jobs and employment, and on one proposal, the buildings were going to be 400,000 square feet. Heck, that's almost 10 acres. That's a lot of land. And I asked, how many employees are each building going to have? And he said between 100 and 500. Well, that's a whole bunch. I'd like him to come in and tell us we're going to have one employee, about the way I figured it out, between 15 and 20,000 square feet. There was one that the fellow that told us it would be 100 to 500 told the Board of Supervisors it was going to be 28. That's a big number. So why would we get one bit of information and somebody else gets more information? But I personally believe that if you get in front of the Board of Supervisors or the Planning and Zoning, you ought to know what you're talking about, and it ought to be really accurate. And as time goes on, that information shouldn't change. But I believe there should be some penalty for that, for getting up there and kind of wasting people's time and just telling us all of the benefits. This is what you're going to get, all this money, all these jobs, and then you realize that it's not the case. I agree on the noise. I understand what Supervisor Miller said with the homes and stuff, but, you know, Pinal County, there's a lot of farms out here, and people are used to living out by themselves. And if you go downtown in Phoenix, it is hotter because of all the buildings and the asphalt just doesn't cool off. But we're not used to that. So when there's dramatic changes like what we're talking about here, it's a big deal because we're not used to that. I read a study by CNN, imagine that. CNN this year, and they said in their study on heat, I don't know where it took place, I imagine it was in the Midwest or something like that, that the increase in temperature at the building was 16 degrees, okay? And then they went out up to 5 miles, and it was 3.6 degrees. And the only way they knew that was that they got there before the project started, and they were able to do the comparison. And let's see here. I'm still really fuzzy on the closed loop. You know, I sell farm equipment for a living. I know what radiators do, and I know what's inside of them. But in this new machinery, and it doesn't run 24 hours a day, we don't use water. You know, we all know that water breaks down. It cannot contain the heat. And as it starts to break down, it forms plaque and other things that reduces the ability of the radiator actually to function. And I would assume it would be the same thing in these data centers. If we're going to pump 200,000 gallons of water in there, we learned in the meeting that we attended in Goodyear was good information. You know, 5 or 6 years it's going to stay in there. But we know that things need to be flushed out. So I think from a citizen standpoint, we've just got to get a lot more clarity. We just got to be told and what it is and exactly what it is, and not maybe a little bit of truth, you know, mingled in with some other word salad or something like that, you know, that's kind of popular. And I think that's about all I have to say. I can stand up here for the rest of the day if you want to, but those are the main things that I'd like to see more of. And I understand where the gentleman's coming from. He's really knowledgeable. And I understand the needs. I understand if I ask the AI a question and I can get an answer back in a minute or in a tenth of a, or not a minute, but a second, tenth of a second, those are really important. If I'm getting operated on, you know, I'd like the surgeon to know that really quickly. You know, if I'm just looking up to see what the temperature is going to be today, not so important. I understand all that, but we've got to understand as Board of Supervisors, as planning and zoning, what the guts are, what's inside. How are we going to affect our climate? How are we going to affect our communities? You know, what are the unknowns? And these people that come up here, they're the experts, but they don't share that. They just give us all the pluses.
So in that, do you have a question, though, that you would like to ask?
Well, I kind of blended them all in there. You know,
Okay.
the employment, I'd like to know, you know, I went inside that one, there wasn't a lot of people there. I'd like to really know the employment. I'd like to talk about heat and the noise. You know, there's high-pitched noise and low-pitched noises. But how are we going to affect our communities by putting those here?
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ebert, did you want to address any of those? No? Okay.
Just
Supervisor.
if I could just make a couple of comments, and I appreciate Tom's and Karen's comments and things to be considering and look at, and to make some additional suggestions as we look further into this, is that considering that what Tom just said about farm equipment and even our vehicles, what they've been before and where they are today. If we hadn't experimented with what we've had before, we wouldn't be in the technology that we have today. And that's one thing these systems, is what you were saying, they were completely cooled down by water, and now we made a shift where these are being cooled down by other chemicals or whatever they're doing to cool them down. And and it's constantly evolving to where it is. This phone right here, I mean, I remember my first computer, it was 40 pounds, and it was a portable one. And
You could pick it up then, though, you were young.
I barely could. I had to have somebody with me. And we had floppy disk, and we were pulling things back in and out just to compute things. And so if it wasn't for that little 40-pound computer that was supposed to be a portable computer, I don't think we'd see this right here computes more than that computer will ever compute. And then as far as employees, we don't know how many actual employees count on that data center. We have no clue. That's an unknown thing because many companies use data centers wherever they're at, all across this world. And so to actually put that kind of number on how many employees they have, I mean, we know we can determine how many they can in the construction side of it, but on the end game of it all, we don't know if we can actually calculate how many employees it has.
Well, those employees are maintenance employees. They're not the people that are using the information, which is at an off-site center, which you're referring to. Yeah, I agree.
Correct. And so, I mean, I get it, and I really do appreciate the fact that this has caused me to go in a direction to be more informed, because I'm one of the decision makers that sit upon this dais. The ultimate decision, one of the ultimate decision makers to set
Glad
things
you
in
said
motion.
one of, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way it is, one of five. And it rests on us to be able to be informed, and I appreciate all of us that have taken the time and effort to really dive into this, to really look at it. I appreciate our commissioners that are serving diligently. Karen's one of my appointees, and she has some of the best questions and things that we need to be looking at and considering. So as we go forward in this process, I recommend that we listen to some of the things that Karen and Tom both brought up so that we keep our citizens more informed as to what's going on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other commissioners want? Mr. Pronzo, do you have a question?
Pontificate, just make it short and sweet. Is it on? Commissioners, I'm a member of Planning and Zoning.
And your name is?
I'm sorry?
And your name is?
And my name?
And your name is, so for the
And
record.
my name is Gary Pranzo. A couple of months back, we had a visit with APS. And during that presentation, we learned that the county needed to grow in power by 13%. Last month, we had a visit with ED3. And we learned that when our hydroelectric power fails, we're going to lose about 20%. So we're talking in percentages, very soft numbers, but from where I sit, we're going to lose about a third of our power. We need 13%, we're going to lose 20, so we need 33% power. We also talk a lot about water. I know farmers and ranchers are digging wells 100 feet deeper than they did 2 or 3 years ago. So we know we're losing the water table as well. Now, as a commissioner, I got a problem. The state has incentivized data centers. They're off the hook for taxes till 29. So we want them to come in. And I too want to see livable wage jobs come along with them. I mean, that's a rare animal, to actually have a livable wage. So that's good for the state, or at least the county, increases our potential cash flow, attracts other businesses. But the problem for a commissioner is, how do I recommend to you whether a data center should go in or not when I don't know whether we have the resources to support that data center? Are we robbing resources from residential? Who's going to take precedent if we have a power failure or not enough power? Will the data center, because they generate cash flow, or will the residential? It feels like we're heading in that direction, that we want to build data centers, but we don't have the resources to support them. Now, I come out of the petroleum and petrochemical industry. And during my career, I've seen a lot of businesses move into you sideways. We're coming along with our own generation plant. And that's fine on the initial build. And as the doctor mentioned, you're becoming more efficient. I've seen that through my lifetime. Hell, I go all the way back. My first phone number was Kofax 3136, okay? And 6 other people were on the same line. So I've seen how efficiency comes along and how we've done better. But we don't have the guidance in front of us to say, okay, we have this much excess energy available to us. So as a data center wants to go in, and we ask them, how much energy are you going to use? Are we past our limit? We don't have that information. Ask the data center, how much water are you going to use? But I don't know if he's coming to us with the same as a developer would have, a 100-year guarantee of water. I don't know that he's using water that we can't afford. So we're in a position where we really cannot make a recommendation to the county supervisors because we don't know if we have the facilities to support it. I understand its use in business. I'm a retired engineer. I built algorithms. I use data centers. I understand their importance. But we have to be careful we don't shoot ourselves in the foot by putting data centers in to compromise the rest of the county. So anyway, thank you. That's my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Pronto.
Questions, too.
Mr. Clove, do you have a?
I do, but I want to.
Ms. Kluger, ladies first. Ms. Kluger, you want to come up, please? Chivalrous.
Hello, I'm Terry Lynn Klukar. I'm one of the commissioners. My concern with the data centers is not so much the data centers themselves. The more I'm learning about data centers, the more I'm understanding that they're not awful. I mean, they do give a lot of benefits to the county, employment and all types of things. But my concern is that they're being placed in areas where we're changing the zoning to accommodate them. The last couple cases that I looked at, they wanted to change the comprehensive plan. They wanted to do an amendment for an industrial area. To me, that's not right. They should be placed in areas that are already zoned industrial. You look at the ones in Goodyear, the one we just looked at a couple weeks ago. I asked the question, did you have to rezone any of these spaces for the data centers? And they said, no, they were already zoned industrial. So when you have that kind of a comprehensive plan and the industrial use is already established, then, okay, if you can put a data center there, go ahead. So I'm not so concerned about the data centers themselves. I'm concerned about where they're being placed, where they're asking to be placed. Rezoning, beautiful farmland to build a data center that's going to stick out like a sore thumb. You're going to see this huge monolithic building out in the middle of the desert. I don't think that's a good way for the county to go, and I don't think it's a good way to look at our planning. I mean, they've established these comprehensive plans for a reason, so that we have aesthetic values for our county. So that's my main concern, is the need or the requesting for them to rezone areas to place these buildings because they are so large. So let's just tell them, hey, you have to put them somewhere where it's already zoned into industry, and just keep them to those criteria.
Thank you. We do have an issue with that, Ms. Kluger, just because cities have a different way that they operate than counties do, because they don't have to deal with state trust land issues and certain private property issues, so there's a problem with it. And I agree with you that that should be done that way, but we'll see how we can work forward on that. Did you have a comment, Mr. Liu?
No, just maybe update that Dr. Ebert had other business to attend to, so he had to meet to those commitments, so that's why he exited.
No problem, thank you. Mr. Clove, you have a comment, question? Question, please? Comment, maybe?
Thank you for the opportunity, Supervisors, Chairman. And the first thing I'd like to pose, I think the presenter had some great information as it relates to the new technology for energy use, water use, heating, cooling, that kind of thing. And I don't know if staff can reach out back out to him to actually get some of those stats and some of that data to follow up on. I think there's a lot of good information out online, but a lot of misinformation online. And if we had something tangible to fall back on, I think that would help out a lot. So that was one thing I was going to ask him if he could provide for us. The other part of this is as it relates to something that he had mentioned, following up also on Rich Vidiello's comments as it relates to the 3 to 5 year. He doesn't see a lot of growth beyond that. What I'm hearing back from our local electric companies is this new gas line that's going to be coming in, the power generation. We're 5 years out at best before that happens, possibly even 10 years out. So we are allocating or potentially allocating a lot of land use speculatively for these data centers that are the power generation that they're going to require is not going to be available in the time that they're going to be needed. So are we going to get caught up in land use speculation like what we have so much of all over our county now? Hidden Valley, south of Maricopa is a great example. We got 80,000 home sites sitting, and some of them have been sitting as just platted home sites for 25 years. So I think we need to be careful about some of that, of where this technology is going, and how we can combat some of that. Technology is great as it relates back to those stats and studies I was talking about. When it works, we've all seen the benefits of it. We all have our phones, we have our cars, we have the way we live in our homes. However, what happens when it fails? And so we can stand here today and say this is the technology we're going to use. It's going to be a closed loop system, and we're only going to use 100 gallons a day. That's great. What happens when we find out 5 years from now that the computations that the equipment is using require double that? And how do we pivot? How do we change? And I think setting those regulations are important because with all technology, it's successes and failures. NASA is a great example of that. Took a lot of failures to get to the moon. For those that believe we went to the moon, I'll leave it at that. The other big thing that I've done a deep dive in data centers in the last 6 or 8 months. I'm on several national committees with the National Association of Home Builders. I've been to several national meetings with them. We just had one in Washington, D.C. a couple months ago. The builders are coming back. Pinal County is one of the fastest growing counties in our country, and we take pride in that. I think there's a lot of good that comes from that. It puts us on the roadmap. However, what I'm hearing about from where these data centers are coming into a lot of areas, Utah, Wyoming, Kentucky, Virginia, where there's also a lot of Georgia, a lot of other building, is these data centers are coming in and they're hiring all the tradespeople. And these builders are saying, we can't get electricians, we can't get plumbers, we can't get concrete people, and so on and so forth. So we want to keep our growth for our homes and our other businesses, but if these, the LOOSA project were to come in with their 59 buildings, I know it's says to be scaled back right now, but that's 26.5 million square feet. That's going to use a lot of the building resources that our county just doesn't have. And I think all other aspects of the built environment are going to suffer from that. I would like to note, as Chairman Goodman, you made a comment about the indirect employees that they're going to have, and I agree 100%. Businesses, hospitals, universities use these things every day. I use AI every day of my work. But I think we need to, for our constituents of our county, we need to be more worried about local jobs. And a 400,000 square foot data center that's going to have 20 or 30 jobs locally might service thousands of others not local, versus Amazon coming in with a 400,000 square foot warehouse having hundreds of jobs. I think we need to be a little careful of that, on that balance, to make sure that we're meeting that. The last thing is, I think the key to all this, and Supervisor Goodman, I'm going to come back to you on this one, having the regulations, having the key to all this, to the success or the failure of how we move forward with data centers, 100% relates to how the county reacts. And what kind of regulations, how are we going to protect our citizens from power, water, noise, consumption, design, so many variables that come into play here. I think it's imperative that we establish these things prior to any of these going forward. What we don't want to happen is what happened to Casa Grande. And they got backed into a corner, and they had no other choice but to approve this, and with very little regulation to fall back on for this this future data center that's coming. So I think that is imperative of how we go forward, is making sure that we have the codes, we have the ordinances, we have the regulations to hold these companies accountable today and in 20 years. Because I think we need them. I think they're coming whether we like it or not, and our development laws dictate there's not a lot we can do as far as development goes. However, we can say these are the parameters you have to live with. Piggybacking on that, I would also like to see our local valley or our local county jurisdictions adopt our same code, and that way you can't go across the street and play in a different ball field. Everyone's playing in the same game. So the key is proper regulation. We've got to hold everybody accountable, just like we do with other industries. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Pope, just for your building resources, in 2007, 2008, we had the crash here. Everybody went to Texas. You couldn't find people here. So if something like this were to occur, they're all going to come here, and they won't find them in Texas, right? I mean, they move wherever the jobs are. That's, they can't get these people, and I realize that they're transient, but they're all going to be here, so.
I've been in the development industry for 40 years. I've followed it. I've been in Arizona since 1989. I've seen the ebbs and the flows of the building industry several times. The difference here is, when the crash of 2008 hit, the whole country crashed.
Right.
They're building data centers in Texas and in Florida and Georgia and Arizona and California. So where our resources did come from in those scenarios or left to, depending on what it was, the same thing's happening there.
Yeah, point taken.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
And I see that we have Ms. Brady here from SRP. Did you want to comment on any energy stuff? Or you just want to be real quiet and hide in the back room? Or point to him? Come on up.
Great. As Scott's coming up with his to speak on this, just wanted to put into the record that the presentation has been submitted to the clerk of the board. Thank you.
Still morning? It still is.
It is. We're sliding right in under the wire.
Morning, Chairman McClure, Vice Chair Surdy, and then also the supervisors. Appreciate it. Let me just test this, make sure it works okay. Awesome. All right, well, I'm Scott Sharley, and I don't know if I'm distinguished, but I thank you for that introduction earlier. I don't have a doctorate. And I'm the Director of Strategic Energy Management at SRP. And so what I'm responsible for is customer service for all of our business customers. So we serve roughly 1.2 million customers within the SRP territory. And of those 1.2 million, approximately 37,000 are business customers. And that spans the gap from a small mom and pop business up to our largest customers, Intel, data centers, mines, smelters, things like that. So I lead a team of account managers and also project managers and integrators to bring new business also to SRP and help facilitate those. We're very agnostic when it comes to what the business is. That's usually handled by the city or the county in this case. And that's just part of the state statute. We have a requirement to serve. So we really try to, hold it as we are agnostic. We have a requirement to serve, therefore we'll serve whatever the industry is. And also we view it as an electron is an electron. It doesn't know if it's going to my house. It doesn't know if it's going to Intel. It doesn't know if it's going to a data center. An electron is an electron. And so I use that as a lead-in because you see the title of my slides is large business customers. So we categorize that segment of customers as 20 megawatts and above. So that's a power threshold. And then everything else below that, we just consider a business customer or then residential. And so my focus today is going to be large business customers. And of those, there are plenty of data centers that are in that category looking to come to our territory or have already been located to our territory. So any questions before I kind of dive into the meat and potatoes? All right, thank you. All right, electrical infrastructure can be confusing, so I'm going to just kind of start off with just some terminology. And then also, if I use an acronym, please don't hold it against me. I'm sometimes really terrible at that. Make sure to call me out so I can explain it to you. But I'm going to try to keep this very high level, and if you need me to go into the weeds, just interrupt me, okay? So this is kind of the microcosm of what a utility does, and specifically SRP. So we generate electricity, which is on the left side of the screen. We are then going to be changing the voltage of that electricity to transmit it around the state of Arizona, and then eventually into different load pockets. And then it gets down to the distribution level, which is usually 12,000 volts roughly, and that's usually the lines that you see around your house. And then it gets transmitted even to a lower voltage, usually 120 volts or 240 volts to your house. So when we're talking about large business customers, this is the infrastructure that I'm going to focus on. So everything that was distribution related is wiped off the screen right now, and what you're seeing is generation and transmission only. Our large load customers, they only connect to the transmission network. So traditionally they're connecting at 69,000 volts. They need a dedicated substation that is just for them, or they're connecting to the 230,000 volt. We have yet to have any customers connect to the 500 kV system, but it is something in the future that is a probability. So this slide is going to depict what's happening with our load in general. And I really want to emphasize the predicted portion there. So as many of you have probably learned over your careers, that a prediction is just that. It doesn't actually mean that it's going to come to fruition. But as you can see in that mustard color, that is our large business customer segment. And based on the amount of data centers that are coming into our territory, we are predicting that they are going to be a substantial chunk of the pie as the years go on. But again, I want to emphasize, it's a prediction. It doesn't mean it's actually going to come to fruition. As the doctor said before, maybe the technology changes, and so the power consumption goes down. But everything that we know today, that is our prediction rate that we're forecasting. The black dotted line in the center is kind of the here and now. And so of that 12% that you see of our large loads, and pay close attention because the blue is everything else. So a couple weeks ago, we hit a system peak. And that system peak for us was roughly 9,000 megawatts. Of that 9,000 megawatts, we have approximately 20 data centers in our territory. They equated to 7% of it. So the vast majority of the power demand that we are providing our customers is residential, small business, regular sized business. It is not large customers. Any questions on that? Because sometimes that really throws people. They see a lot of things that are in the news, and it's also something that I've kind of termed as bragawatts. So you'll see the data centers or the news stories. They're going to go to the absolute peak of what that data center or that business is capable of consuming. They almost never consume that amount.
Just a comment, I think it's important to note that everybody talks about the grid. It is multiple grids. It is,
Right.
it is SRP's grid. It is APS's grid. It is ED3's grid off APCO or wherever they get their, they make power separately than all these other places. So it's not like it goes and goes it's like these are guided to different, WAPA, for instance, even all those, they're all separate. So it's not one big pot that it goes into. So everybody has to be just cognizant of that.
We have to abide by regulations that are set forth within our balancing authority. So that's kind of what SRP is responsible for controlling. So voltage, frequency, and then from there, all the utilities around the Western Interconnect are buying and selling power. So we have to, consistently balance the grid as the load increases and decreases. So as load could decrease in California, maybe we're selling power from our area to California and vice versa. But it's a highly intertwined, connected system. But you're right, Chairman. I'm just talking about SRP sphere right now.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Did you say the 7% was just industry, or did you say that was data centers?
That was just data centers. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so of the 20 data centers that are operating in our area, they are 7% of that roughly 12%.
Okay, so if that was to triple over the next 3 years, or actually 5 years, because it takes 3 years to build them, that would really put a major strain on you, correct?
No.
No.
No. Supervisor, would you mind if I get further into my
Sure.
presentation, and then I'm going to be able to kind of explain that? Okay, so I was the lucky recipient, my team and I, and a lot of the people at SRP, to be dealing with the challenge of data centers. And about 1.5 years ago, everything broke. We were just sitting there scratching our heads going, we cannot handle this. This doesn't make sense. Who's real, who's not real? There's no way that we can serve this, getting to your point. And finally, we just slammed on those brakes and we said, okay, we're done. Everybody who's in our queue or everybody who wants to get in our queue, time out. We can't continue this, especially as being a not-for-profit. It just was not possible. So these are some of the challenges that we were having to deal with. So we had unprecedented interest in load growth requests. And there's a lot of misinformation as to, well, why the heck are all the data centers coming to Arizona? So if I can just maybe elaborate a little bit more on there. So one is we have almost no natural disasters. A data center, their prime responsibility is reliability, okay? So if you have very low natural disaster rates, that's going to attract them. The second one is industry. So TSMC and Intel are based here in Arizona, and they sell the chips that go into the data center. And then all the little ancillary businesses that support them, it's like this symbiotic relationship. So you kind of get your friend over here and your other friend over here, and so they're just drawn to each other. They cluster to each other. The other thing is very reliable power. So we take a lot of pride between either APS or SRP or TEP. We have very reliable power, okay? If a data center's prime responsibility is reliability to serve their customers, well, that reliability is really important to them. The other thing is low cost of land. So there's a lot of land in the area and it's low cost and they need a lot of land. The other item is a robust fiber infrastructure. So it is not easy to build a very robust fiber infrastructure, but we've had lots of years to do that. Whether it's, the common data centers that I talk to, they have 4 different redundant feeds of fiber going into their network. And that's so in case 1 or 2 get cut accidentally from a guy running a backhoe down the street, that means they have 2 other feeds that still support their data center. So those are kind of the general things that we've seen as to why the data centers are all coming here. Just wanted to make sure that you understood that. And then there's just this incredible significant cost to build the infrastructure. And further in my presentation, I'll elaborate on that. They all want the capacity sooner than technically is feasible. The magnitude of the infrastructure is just crazy. They have always historically struggled to provide accurate load ramps. So Supervisor, this gets to your question. I really can't emphasize enough the bragawatts. They are all out there touting X, Y, and Z because they're trying to land a customer, okay? And they're wanting to say, I have all this capacity, here's what the plan is, come to my data center. But it doesn't mean it actually comes to fruition. And we have years of data to prove this because data centers are not new to Arizona. We've been serving data centers for 20 plus years in our territory. Some of the original data centers were exactly what you guys were talking about earlier. They're in buildings for government use. They're even SRP. We migrated all of our data centers that were in the various buildings. It was too much a risk. It was too much cost. We put them into actual data centers that now we rent space for. So it's just a common maturation of the industry and its efficiency. But the load ramps are just not accurate. And then there was this incredible strain on utility staff because as you probably know, data centers are highly capitalized. They have teams of people to go and find these sites. And it's very taxing on utility staff. So this is where we pump the brakes and we said, now we got to restructure and do something different. So a question I commonly get is data centers, or it's a statement. Data centers are driving up costs for all the other customers, or why are data centers driving up the costs? At least in SRP territory, that is 100% not true. And so this is how a data center pays for their infrastructure. And I'm going to break it up in 2 different buckets, and then I'm going to explain each of those later on in the presentation. The first one is all the generation. So there on the left side. How is that paid for? That's paid for through the rates, okay? So that's going to be separate. The other item is all the transmission infrastructure. So the lines, the transmission lines, the towers that are needed, the land that needs to be secured, the maintenance of it, and then additionally the substation that has to get built for them. The customer pays that 100% upfront before a single electron travels. So we de-risk it, and we've been doing this for 40-something years, to say, if you want it, you have to pay for it all up front. We're going to build the lines, and then we'll provide you power to it.
So just to make it be very clear, it's not the current customers that are here paying for the infrastructure. It's the data center, that customer, that's actually paying all the bill to get the infrastructure.
Correct,
Okay.
Supervisor. Yep.
Okay.
If you are going to come into SRP or APS territory or any utility across the United States, and you're going to connect into the transmission network, you now have to abide by regulations that are not at the distribution level. And the reason being is you can influence and influence the power quality of everyone else, and we don't want that to happen. So therefore, we put you through a study, and I'll go into more detail on that, to say, how are we going to interconnect you? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? And then when is it going to actually power up? Okay, so when a customer comes, and what I'm explaining here, supervisors, is our current new process that we're going through.
Okay.
So when a customer comes to us, whether it's a chip manufacturer or a data center, they are saying that, hey, I want to interconnect to your transmission system. We say, great. Now we're going to go and run what's known as a transmission study. And previously, we used to do a serial style study. This is something that is very common across the United States, but it's breaking all over across the United States. And now what we do is what's known as a cluster study. So a cluster study is where we have a window of time, let's say 2 months, and we say to the various projects, we hear you would like to connect to the transmission system, pay a fee, let's get some information from you, and then let's put you into this study. And then we're going to holistically see how you break the system. So I want to emphasize that. When you bring in a new large load like this, you break the system. So then we take a look and we say, okay, what did you break? How do we mitigate it? And then how much is it going to cost? Here's the price tag. Do you want to go forward? And then if they do, they pay for the whole thing. We build it, and then they can connect. So then we say, all right, you want to be a part of this. We're going to give you an application. That application is $40,000, and that covers the costs of my staff's time and the various engineers. So no other ratepayers picking up that cost either. And then when they want to go into this study, it's known as a cluster study, they have to pay $250,000. And again, that covers the labor that is needed to perform this study. So again, no other ratepayers are paying this cost. And by the way, all those are non-refundable. So this is if you are here to play, you are putting down the money, and if 5 days into it, you get cold feet and you want to walk away, tough. The money is sticking with us. Yep. So then, again, like I said before, the customer, they have to pay for everything 100% upfront before a single electron gets to their doorstep. Then I'm going to shift over to the generation side. So the generation side, that's where maybe a little bit more risk was present. And so in our latest price process with our board of directors, which is a public process, we introduced a brand new way of dealing with the pricing. And what we're requiring now is a 15-year long-term contract. So customers don't get to wiggle out or walk away from the risk. Because before it was, hey, SRP or any utility, we're going to come in, but really the generation risk is kind of your problem. We said, no, you're not doing that. And so now you're signing on a dotted line with a 15-year contract that has very tough teeth into it and very stringent collateral requirements. The average collateral requirements that I'm putting forth are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And the collateral requirements, they are not something that are just willy-nilly, I'm going to sign a parent guarantee and then declare bankruptcy. They are usually a very, very strong surety bond or irrevocable letter of credit. So these are kind of the best gold standards to make sure that the customer is real and they're not going to walk away from the table. Additionally, when they get their monthly bill, we have a requirement here, which is a good portion of the bill, where they are paying 80% minimum demand. So there was a question asked before of, do they provide their projected load? And the answer is yes. They're required to project the load at a monthly basis for that entire 15 years. Because we need to know what it's going to be so that we can account for it when we build the generation in order to serve them. So we went through this cluster study. And this is, I'm going to go through the history and then where the results are. This is, again, it's designed to weed out the speculation from the people that are really committed and want to be in the territory and are able to take on that risk. So, I'm just going to hit the highlights. We started it in April 2025. It was our transition cluster, is what we were calling it. There were 24 participants, and so every single one of those was the data center. They either had site control of the land, they either had already permits for the land, or it was a speculative area where they were hoping to locate a data center. We gave them their results in October of 2025. What we studied was 7.2 gigawatts. As of right now today, what I just told you, we're a 9 gigawatt utility. It took us over 100 years to get to 9 gigawatts, but we had sitting on our doorstep 7.2 gigawatts of request. So this is our process of seeing, okay, who's real and who's not. Earlier, I talked about breaking the system. So we identified 83 distinct points, what we call network upgrades, where the system broke. And therefore, the customers needed to share in the cost of these 83 mitigations in order to move forward. And the total cost was roughly $13 billion. And when I talked about earlier how all the electrical systems are interconnected, this affects even APS and WAPA. So something that happens in SRP's territory can affect APS and other utilities that interconnect. In order for a customer to move forward, they had to put down a 30% deposit. Again, this was extremely stringent. They had to put down the deposit in the form of an irrevocable letter of credit. These were gigantic dollar amounts, and they can't walk away from it. So it really, really said, if you're serious and you're ready to go, then put down the money. So from those 24, we went down to 3. So 3 of them put down a 30% deposit. 2 of those locations were in the East Valley, and 1 was in the West Valley. Excuse me. It equated to a very large number. Keep in mind, it's still a gigawatt of power. We delivered those final restudy results because when you look at 24 holistically and then you move down to 3, you have to perform a restudy because the loads have changed and what you broke has changed, and then also the generation points have changed. So we went from 12.8 billion down to 1.5 billion. We went from 83 network upgrades to 8. So those 8 network upgrades were shared proportionately based on the customer's load for getting a price tag and setting it up. So September 15th is the deadline where if a customer wants to keep moving forward, now they have to put 60% down. And so at that point, we will consider it concluded, and those customers are real, and then we will continue on to design and construction contracts. So that, in a nutshell, is my presentation. I do have some backup slides just to give, I think they're good visual representations, so one second. This is our territories in light gray, but our infrastructure spans way outside of our electrical service territory. So you can see that in the lines. So this is the mitigations that were needed for the very first portion of the study, the 83, and you can just see how wide and vast it was of what we needed to upgrade. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you. That was very informational. Any questions from the board?
More of a statement. Not a story.
No,
just
questions. Sorry. Supervisor, we'll come back to you in a minute. Supervisor Miller, do you have a question?
I don't have a question.
You're doing the same thing. Okay, well, then I'm going to come back to you. Goodman, you're...
Don't statements allowed, huh?
No.
Just come back to me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Supervisor
No,
Goodman.
that's all right. I can yield to the old man.
Oh.
No, this is something that we've been needing, this kind of information for a long time that we've been asking for. and I appreciate SRP stepping up to the plate to do that for us. I mean, this gives us a really, really good understanding of where you guys are headed and what you've been doing, and actually weeding out the what do they call them? The tire kickers.
Speculators.
Yeah, you're getting down to, they're gonna buy the tire, they're gonna buy the car. They're not kicking the tires anymore, they're buying the car. And so, and that puts everybody, I think that helps us a lot when we're up here making the decision. I'm confident that it helps our commissioners that are sitting on that Planning and Zoning Committee, as they now have a better understanding of how SRP is approaching all of this, as well as APS and even WAPA.
Yeah.
And so, and TEP is probably in part of that equation as well, I would imagine. So, for me, that's great. This is great information. Appreciate staff putting this together.
Thank you. Okay, Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, and I don't know how many times I've said it, and I'll say it again. When a project like this is going to come, I mean, they want zoning first. But after they get the zoning, look at what has to happen before a shovel is ever put in the ground. Look at the millions and millions of dollars that will be spent prior to the construction of anything on any of these projects. And I've said it from the beginning, if they can't get the power, they won't build it. If they can't get the water, they won't build it. And this presentation is what, just like Supervisor Goodman just said, is way overdue, because the understanding of how the grid works, understanding of the expansion of the grid, understanding how you have to pay to play is very, very important. Pinal County does not provide the electricity. That's the owner's responsibility to go get that electricity wherever he thinks he needs to go and get it. We don't provide the water. The state of Arizona will tell them whether or not they have enough water and have the ability to use water. Again, back to the capitalistic society that we live in. You put out a lot of money if you want to get into the data center game, and I just really appreciate this presentation. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you to SRP.
questions? Supervisor Vitiello.
Yes, sir. So, again, thanks for everything that you guys do and make it fruitful for us to understand what's going on.
You're welcome, Super.
But then you hear the word behind the meter.
Yeah.
And I don't exactly feel comfortable hearing about behind the meter if they're not hooking up to the grid, because these generators have to run 24/7, 7 days a week, and that's going to create a lot of issues. So could you give me a little bit about behind the meter, please? Because
Yep. And Supervisor, I apologize too. You asked a question earlier, and I don't know if I fully answered it. It was related to the generation. So let me go back a couple slides. That right-hand side, that 15-year contract, when they finalize the transmission study, at that point in time, it usually takes about 4 years to build the infrastructure, 4 to 5 years, in order to get them the electrons. As soon as they sign on the dotted line to say, yes, I want to go forward, we are having them sign that contract as well, the generation contract. And so they're putting up that capital up front for the generation side. That's one, how we are de-risking it for other customers. And it's two, the real business signal to us to go out and procure that generation for them. Before they even sign on the dotted line to pay for their transmission, we are very upfront in our study results to say, hey, it may take us 5 years to build the transmission lines, but you need to know that it could be 10 years before we get the generation for you. So all of that, we put upfront so that they see everything wide open before they start giving us money. So apologize if I didn't answer that earlier.
okay, so let me just ask you this. So then basically you're telling me if a data center wanted to come on, and they say they wanted to come on in 5 years, hypothetically, it could be 5 to 10 years before you could supply them the power.
It could
Possibly.
be. It really depends. So I'm going to lead into your next question. Speed to power is the absolute most important thing to them. And so a data center does not want behind the meter for actual robust connection. Okay, so long-term, their clientele demand connection to the grid. And you may ask, well, why is that? Because connection to the grid equals reliability and redundancy. So if their clients want to make sure that they have uptime for their servers and their data, then connecting to the grid is the most robust solution. But since speed to power is so important, they're willing to do some temporary trade-offs. And so it might be where, let's say they come to us and say, I need 100 megawatts in 5 years. We can say, well, we can get the transmission to you, and we can get you your 100 megawatts. But we can only maybe get you 15 megawatts of generation. And they say, okay, I think I can live with that based on my load ramp and how many servers I might put in this data center. So it's kind of a step function to eventually get them to where they want to be. And then the other thing is, we're here to support the community. Again, an electron is an electron. We don't make that decision. We have state obligation to serve. So if the community decides that they want X business there, it's our job to come to the table with solutions. And in many cases, we are hearing of data centers and large load customers in general. It's not just data centers. The mines have been doing this for years, where they say, hey, let's talk about bringing in some generation to supplement until the final build out can be there. But by no means have I heard from any data center where they 100% want to rely on behind the meter, because eventually their clientele, they don't really want that. They want connection to the grid for the robustness. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, and then part of the other issue is that some of these are coming into want to come into areas that are such as ED2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, that don't create anything, no power at all,
Right.
rely on SRP, APS, which is making it more difficult in my mind. So if they want to go behind the grid, they can't get the power from you because they're not in the SRP area. They got to go through a third party, which I'm going to call it, ED2, 3, 4.
Okay.
That makes it even more difficult, correct?
I would imagine it makes it more difficult because now you are dealing with your local utility, and then your local utility is needing to create some other contract with a different supplier in order to bring the generation to that point. So I think that's a fair assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Does the Planning and Zoning Commission have any questions? Come on up and do 2 quick ones. Thank you, Mr. Charlie.
Thank you, Supervisors, and thank you for your presentation. To kind of follow up a little bit on Supervisor Vitiello has just mentioned, understanding the evaluation process that you have here and how it ties back to, so many of us in Pinal County are under one of the ED, districts 2, 3, 4, whatever. And we just heard a case at P&Z a couple weeks ago about one, and they're pretty much on board. Everything's behind the meter. ED3 is not involved. So hearing what you just said kind of counters that. And so, again, more red flags that come up with some of this. So I would like a little bit more, how it relates to the electric districts that we have and deal with it all the time, and tying back into SRP. The second one is, as you're going through your large customer integration process with these data center developers, do you require all the land entitlements to be in place prior to, because we're asking for, and potentially, depending on how our regulations are eventually established, calculations on load capacities and requirements and so on. And if they're not getting that until they get to this stage, then there's that disconnect as it ties back into the land entitlement process and the rezoning and so on. So if you could address those 2 things. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
how SRP and the electric districts are kind of tying back together to make sure this process works.
So on the first question, it's burgeoning and new. So I think it is unknown at the moment. I do know that discussions have been taking place, but it's definitely not a formal process. And so I think we're kind of just working through it at the moment. I know that's not a very distinct answer for you, but that's just the honest truth of where it's at. For your second question is, no, we don't require like site control. And the reason being is, again, we have an obligation to serve. So if the customer of record for that area says, I would like to have electricity here, then we have an obligation to oblige that. Now, beforehand, we are definitely doing our due diligence and we are asking those questions in that application portion. And we'll tell them, well, we notice you don't have site control, or we notice that you don't have anything permitted. Let's talk about this and be a good neighbor and educate you on the hurdles that you were about to encounter. And again, I know we're talking about data centers specifically here, but I deal with large customers all over. LG Electronics, the mines, these are not new things and new hurdles. It just happens to be this is kind of the flavor. So did I answer your question, sir? Or okay.
And I think, Mr. Club, your question, they're not going to be able to get their financing and their backers if they can't get it entitled a certain way. Otherwise, they got nothing. You know, so they've got to get something that they can say, hey, we got this spot that we could do this possibly. So I think that maybe helps with your question. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Charlie? Thank you for your time. We appreciate you very much.
For your time. Appreciate it, Supervisors.
All right. No other questions from the board? No other comments? Okay. Then I think we shall move on to item number 7 here. A discussion, approval, disapproval to issue notice of termination to Flock Group Incorporated of the extension of the right-of-way licenses. Mr. Orton, nope. Mr. Denton, you're standing, oh, Mr. Darani. Okay, even better. I was pulling on him because he stood up. I thought, oh, here he comes, you know, but now. If you could give us maybe just a quick break here, we'll come right back. Tell you what, we'll take like a 5-minute break here real quick. Sorry about that. Sit down, here we go. All right. Okay, we are now coming to item number 7, and this is the issue notice of termination of the Flock Group for the extension of right-of-way license agreement. And we have Mr. Durrani. I'm ready. And this was, oh, I'm sorry. And the item was requested by Vice Chairman Surdy. You're welcome. Please.
So yeah, we, last week, this can't be done with just a stroke of a pen or a statement. So now Ian is going to explain what it is exactly has to happen to make this permanent as we wish. So that's that's why we're here.
Okay. Chairman, members of the board, Ian Durrani from the Pinal County Attorney's Office. So just to give a brief summary of what this agreement is and how we got to the point that the board is at in terms of considering what action, if any, it will take. In August of 2022, there was a right-of-way agreement approved by the board with Flock Group, Inc. for the placement of cameras throughout various locations on county right-of-ways. This was essentially a trial period. After that trial period had concluded, the current right-of-way agreement, the extension that we're talking about, was passed in September of 2024. And the extension became effective on the date it was recorded, September 5th of 2024. And the important terms for this board to be aware of are that the extension of the right-of-way agreement is for a 5-year term. So it is effective until September 5th of 2029 currently. However, the board has the ability to terminate this agreement, as does Flock, upon issuance of 180 days written notice. So that is the action that is before the board for it to choose. Now, should the 180-day written terminated notice be issued, that obviously leads into considerations about removal of the equipment from county right-of-ways. And the county, in the current license agreement, has the ability to set a schedule for Flock to remove those items from the rights-of-way. And then if that removal is not done in accordance with that schedule, the county can remove those items and then later bill Flock for that removal cost. So just as a point of clarification, because there was a discussion about contracts previously with the sheriff's office, this agreement before the board is just as to the rights-of-way. The contract with Flock between the sheriff's office and Flock for the leasing of the camera equipment and the associated services with it is not part of this agreement. That they are two separate things, and the notices of termination of those contracts have already gone out. So what's before the board for its consideration is just the right of Flock to place its equipment on county infrastructure in the county right-of-ways. So with that, are there any questions from any member of the board?
Quick question. So if we have the cancellation of the Flock agreement with the sheriff is over, or will be. And are we going to set a schedule, or we have set a schedule for the removal of this equipment?
So a schedule has not been set just because the board hasn't voted on whether or not to issue the notice of termination. But I've spoken with Public Works staff and stated that, the first step is issuing this notice of termination, and then I would advise quickly following up with a schedule for the removal of the items. And as to the contracts with the sheriff's office, I can confirm that those notices of termination have gone out to Flock and they've acknowledged receipt.
So out of curiosity then, are they still pulling information even though we've canceled the contract until such time as the items are removed from the right-of-ways?
So there's a slight distinction with the contract because it was not, and I probably misspoke, I did misspeak. The notice of termination of the contracts was actually a notice of non-renewal. Yes. Because of the way those contracts were structured, there is not a right to terminate unless there are certain conditions that have been met, bankruptcy, things like that. Obviously, those have not happened, so it was just a notice of non-renewal. So that those contracts are technically in effect until September 29th, but they will not be renewed, so they will terminate on that date. So my expectation is that the services are continuing, but there's that hard stop at September 29th.
Okay, so we would set a rather quick schedule for the removal of the equipment.
That's within the board's prerogative to do.
So for clarification, we have to have one more meeting after this to?
No. If the board chooses to terminate the right-of-way, that's the main issue before the board, and then staff, in accordance with that termination, can proceed with the schedule for removal with Flock.
Okay. Is that satisfied?
I think so.
Yes, sir, Chairman, so the 29th of September, the system gets shut off. Is that correct?
That is when the services and the leases of the Flock equipment are concluded, yes.
And it'll take a few, weeks to take them down.
And to be clear, this is only the ones that are under county control, not in the cities,
Correct.
not anywhere else. So just so we're clear on that.
So then it'll take weeks after that to get them out of the ground?
Weeks or a month or who
Whatever it
knows.
takes. Okay, so September 29th, system is shut off for good in the county area.
That's my understanding,
I
but
just want to make sure.
That is the way the contract, the non-renewal of the contract is intended to operate. However, Flock is the other party in all of this, so the way it should work and the way it will work, hopefully they are the same.
Okay, thanks.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Durrani, appreciate it.
I
guess, I'm sorry, are there any more? I'm sorry, did you want a question?
He says it'll take weeks. I said it takes citizens 5 minutes to get him out.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Supervisor Miller, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think there's some unintended consequences for all this action. I think it should be explored more, but we'll just have to see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. So with that, if there's no other questions, no other comments, I'm going to ask for a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 7 as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, I have 4 ayes, 1 nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 8, which is the, I need to recess the special session of the Board of Supervisors and convene the Desert Vista Sanitary District Board of Directors meeting. And so at this time, we have consent items A and B. All items indicated alphabetically below will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member or county manager objects at the time the agenda item is called. Are there any items that board wishes to pull? Hearing none. County manager? None. In that case, may I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve item A and B on the consent items.
I have a
as
motion.
presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Yeah, second. I have a motion and a second. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. I will now adjourn the Desert Vista Sanitary District Board of Directors meeting and reconvene the special session of the Board of Supervisors. And at this point, there is no other business before the board. This meeting is adjourned.